All right. Good morning. This
Good
is
morning.
Attorney. Good morning. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and these are my office hours, where you get to call in or come on the show and ask me your 3 or 4 most important questions. This morning we have Kay from Texas. Good morning, Kay. How's everything going?
Good morning. Everything's good. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Good. Thank you. So go ahead and ask me your first question.
What is the process for suing CPS for endangering children through their placements?
Well, if you want to sue CPS, you can either do it in state court or you can do it in federal court under something called 42 USC 1983. And depending on your strategy, your causes of action, in other words, your claims against CPS, you and your attorney would want to decide whether you should sue in state court or federal court. State court and federal court have different rules of evidence, different rules of procedure, sometimes different jury sizes and different jury rules. So you would want to make a strategic decision on where you should sue CPS. Now, I can tell you that if you do file in state court and you allege some type of federal claim or federal cause of action, the defendant can remove the case or move the case to federal court. But it's something that you and your attorney should discuss and come up with a strategy and a plan.
Um, what would be the difference? What would be an example of something that would happen during a federal proceeding or a state proceeding where the defendant may choose to remove that case and say, no, this needs to be in the other court system?
Well, they have to do it right at the beginning. They
Okay.
can't wait. So they have to do right at the beginning. And there's nothing that would happen other than sometimes, I'll give you an example of what happens in California with me sometimes. Sometimes if I file a case in state court, the defendants remove the case to federal court. There are different rules of evidence, different rules of procedure, different timing rules, and there's a difference in the jury. In California, you only need 9 out of the 12 to vote for you to win. In federal court, you need 12 out of the 12. So you see that there's an important difference
Yeah,
right there.
that's a big
Right.
one.
Yeah.
And do you know what those rules are in Texas on the state court level?
Oh, no, I don't. No, I don't.
Okay.
But I'm sure that if you Google civil rights lawyer, Texas, or whatever county you're in, you'll find, several names that you can call and just ask.
Okay. My next question is, how do I report a CPS officer for gross negligence regarding their failure to investigate the crimes against my child that I reported and she reported?
Okay. There are several ways you can do either state and or federal. The federal way to do it is with the Department of Health and Human Services. They have a complaint form, and the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division in your area. Now, this is important because the Department of Health and Human Services is the federal agency that controls all of the CPS money given to the states and counties throughout the country to operate CPS. And let me tell you from my own personal knowledge, I know that if they decide to take the case, they do an extremely detailed and a good job on investigating serious accusations against state social workers. So
Okay.
the trick is getting them to take the case. They don't take every case. So you got to convince them, kind of do a lawyering job, and maybe your attorney can help you with that to convince them to
Okay.
do it. Now, if you want to do it at the state level, I don't know if Texas is a state or a county-run CPS, but you would make complaints to the state agency and the county agency against those social workers who you believe have done some type of wrongdoing or gross negligence. I'm not a big fan of doing that because, it seems like you get, to me anyway, it seems like you get less action on the state level or in the county level because they know that you're probably going to end up suing them, and in the long run, the state is going to investigate something that they're going to may have to pay for in the future. So,
Okay.
but I would still make that complaint. You know, I would still make that complaint at the state level and the county level, but I would definitely also make it at the federal level.
And you said the federal level was through the Health and Human Services Commission. Did I get that written down right? I was trying to take notes.
Sure. You don't have to take notes because this will exist on the internet forever. So you can just watch it again and again. You want to contact online the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. And I believe on their website they have the complaint form. Additionally, and separately, you want to contact and file a complaint with the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. So in your area, there will be a U.S. Department of Justice office, and you want to call them and ask them for their Civil Rights Division. And then when you get in contact with them, you say, where can I file a complaint? And they'll tell you, well, we'll have to mail it out to you, or you have to come down to the office, or it's online. And here's the web address and the link to go ahead and file it online. I think everyone is trying to move to online complaint forms, but I don't think everyone is there yet. So you'll have to find out from your local office.
Okay. Thank you. It's good information to have. My next question is, what are a parent's rights when CPS calls and starts demanding to have access to our children? I have tried in the past saying, no, I'm just not going to agree with this. I had continuous nonstop CPS reports that were filed anonymously until the law changed in September of last year. And magically since then, I have had none. So, in dealing with this and being treated as though I'm this terrible mom who's trafficking her kids. I mean, the allegations are obscene, but that's to force CPS to show up to my house within 24 hours to make sure my kid's okay. And it's to force them to really, I feel, come at me very hard, and then when they get in my life, like, well, this is your 9th CPS investigation. And I'm like, yeah, well, they've never found anything wrong. You're not going to find anything wrong now. So why are we here? So what are my rights in that? Because I felt very, intimidated and isolated and scared. And I know that's the tactic they used, but I tried telling them I need time to talk to my attorney. And I need, I need time to, look at this, and you can't see my kid right now. She's busy. Like, I've tried everything, or I'm just not going to comply. I'm not going to answer. And then it becomes harassment. And I've been dealing with this for about 2 years now.
Well, if you were in California, you don't have to let them talk to or see your kids unless they have a warrant. Right.
I thought that, yeah, I thought that was my understanding about Texas too. However, I have been bullied and harassed and railroaded by CPS it started in October of 2021 with the first false report, and all the way up until December. I've had back to back. And in every case, they didn't have a warrant. They demanded access to my child, access to medical records, access to my DNA through drug screens and tests. And I felt like, even knowing my rights and that they had to have a warrant and they had to force it to court, I got to be honest with you, I never felt like that was an option. I was threatened that they were basically going to come take my kid away, and they would show up with the police and, and told, well, most people just want to participate. I'm like, well, I don't have anything to hide. I just, I don't want to deal with you. It's intimidating. It's upsetting to my child. We're both autistic, and just, this is a disruption to our routine, and it's harassment. So if I know that they have to have a warrant, how can I handle that situation when they're bullying you? I mean, I've heard so many horror stories, and thank you for the work that you guys do. Like, what options do I just, because I've tried not answering the phone. I've tried not responding to the text messages. I've tried just completely ignoring them, and they never go away from me. So I don't understand.
So I'm going to assume for a moment. I'm going to assume for a moment that they do have to have a warrant. The fact that they don't have a warrant and they keep harassing you, and you finally give in, I mean, that's a personal choice you've made. I sometimes tell people, don't answer the phone, don't respond to texts, don't answer the door. Okay, unless they have a warrant, of course, here in California. So the fact that you give in to the bullying, that's between you and your attorney. Now, I don't know
Okay.
what the law. I don't know what the law is in Texas, whether you have to talk to them or not. But I remember on a couple of occasions the harassment got so bad here in California that I recommended to the parent to go to court and get a restraining order. And on one occasion, it didn't work, but on another occasion, I believe the judge said something like, "Ma'am, unless you have, probable cause and apply for the warrant, you're going to have to leave this lady alone. She's made it clear that, she doesn't want to talk to you."
And in regards to probable cause, hearsay or an allegation that's made is not probable cause. There has to be evidence to back that up. Is that correct?
Well, that's a very gray area. Okay. Now, if I'm a witness and I say Kay has abused her child and I've seen it happen, that's not hearsay. Okay. I'm telling you, it may be a lie, but it's not hearsay.
I see.
Okay. But if I say, hey, my friend's uncle said Kay is abusing her child, that's multiple hearsay.
Got it. I understand.
Probably is not going to be sufficient for a warrant.
That makes sense.
Generally, warrants are issued by statements of witnesses that have some type of personal knowledge. Like they saw it, they heard it, they felt it, they tasted it, they have personal knowledge of something happening. And a lot of times, it might be your neighbor who heard, the screaming and the beatings from next door. Or it might be the, school teacher where the child told the teacher, hey, my mom's abusing me. She's beating the crap out of me every night. So even though that's hearsay, there's an exception. There are many exceptions to hearsay, and you have to be cognizant of that. You have to know the rules on that. But I would suggest instead of you trying to do this on your own, that you contact a lawyer in your locale, or at least in Texas.
I feel pretty, I definitely would love to find an attorney. I have been on the hunt since last year in November, when the CPS state intake department told me during a call that I should get an attorney and sue CPS for what happened to us. And that was in November. I'm not going to go into details about what that call was regarding, but I was told that by somebody from the state intake department with CPS. It told me, keep doing what you're doing. You're clearly a loving, protective mother. I'm sorry for what you've had to go through, and you should consider getting an attorney and suing CPS. I was told that. I have tried since then and spent countless hours on the phone and doing research through lawyer referral systems, because I'm indigent, because of the stuff that was happening in my world. So I have not been able to successfully find an attorney that will represent my case. And that's very frustrating, because I know that I have a strong case. And so I'm trying to get as much information as I can, because something needs to be done about it. I know I'm not the only person that something like this has happened to. And, that leads me into my next question, which is, how can I work with helping change the laws surrounding CPS and the way that they're treating families? I feel as though they're not rescuing the kids that really need to be rescued. And that's part of the thing that I have going on. And they're harassing, parents such as myself. And I want to know, is there anything that can be done, to combat this organization? I know we're raising awareness right now and we're giving information, but at the state level or at the federal level, what would be the process? Would it be showing up during the next open session and proposing a change to a law about CPS? Do you have any suggestions on that?
I do. They are all time consuming and can be, from a transactional cost, can be expensive. So let me ask you something. In your state, how do you change anything? How do you change any law?
So you research the law and you look into the statistics, and then you look for similar laws that are on the books coming up during the next open session so that you can go and speak at it. You're shaking your head no.
No,
That was how I thought you changed the law. I'm ready for some information, Mr. Davis.
it's much simpler than that, but it's easily said and hard to do. Here's how you change CPS. You elect state legislators that are pro-K and willing to make laws or change laws. That's very hard to do. Okay, it's very time consuming. There's a lady who's working out of Tennessee who does a lot of lobbying and fighting CPS, and her name is Connie Reguli. Okay,
How do you spell the last name?
I think it's Reguli.
Reguli.
Yes.
Okay.
Now she has a Facebook group called, I think it's called Family Forward Project. Okay, so you can try to connect with her that way, or you can just look her up on Facebook. But she's in
Okay.
Tennessee. She's in Tennessee. I think she is a lawyer. I'm not sure. I know she was a lawyer, and then they brought a case against her because she was fighting CPS tooth and nail. But they haven't stopped. They haven't stopped her. She makes many trips to Washington D.C. to talk to congressmen and senators, and makes many trips to the state of Tennessee's capital to talk to state legislators. See, you can only change things if you change the law. But here's
Exactly.
here's here's the significant thing that I want to tell you. The way CPS is set up now in most states, probably all states, it is a multi-million, sometimes billion-dollar industry for the local government. All right. So, when you go talk to state legislators about changing something, you're basically also telling them, oh, the government's going to get less money if you make these changes. And if you're in the business of making money, do you want to do something that stops that business?
Sadly, I know how realistic that is.
The other thing
Yeah.
that you can do, here in California, I don't know about Texas, here in California, judges can be appointed or judges can be elected, but if they're appointed, they have to be re-elected. So what you want to do is you want to help judges that are family friendly get on the bench. That's the bottom line. They are the men and women who enforce these laws, who either support or don't support CPS. So that's another way. So there's two ways, but it involves voting either way. Now, I want to tell you something. I used to do a radio show on ABC in Los Angeles, and one year the Republicans tried to do a recall of Governor Newsom here in California. And they had a radio show that was on right before me. So every time I was in the studio, sometimes I would run into these guys. And it was fascinating learning about how they organized from the state level all the way down to the neighborhood level. And they used the internet, right? They fully maximized the internet to organize people. So they lost their bid to recall the governor, but they had over 1 million signatures. What if you had 1 million signatures in your state? You'd be one very powerful person because those signatures or those supporters would vote for who you suggest they vote for. And, politicians are politicians. They're looking out for people that can vote to keep them in office or put them in office. You get it?
That is, yeah. My brain is ticking. With that's a really good idea. I'm in a position now where I've tried so many different things and felt like nothing worked. And I know so many other families, women and men, that have dealt with similar issues. And I want there to be change. I want people to rally together behind something, because we've got to stand up for each other. My motto is together we're stronger. The only way to get change is to get people together. 1 million signatures in a state the size of Texas seems like it's doable in my brain.
Right. But here's another thing that I want you to think about, because it's real. I come across a lot of advocates and people that want to make change, but a lot of times they're sabotaging each other, right? Have you ever heard of this scenario? If you put a crab in a bucket without a lid, that crab will crawl out of the bucket, okay?
Yes.
But if you put 5 crabs in the bucket, none of them will ever get out. You know why? Because as soon as one almost gets out, another crab will pull him back in. It's a strange social phenomenon. And I see that often with the different groups that are trying to fight CPS, and they haven't learned or understood that working together, not against each other, is the way to make change. But
Yes.
like I tell people all the time, everyone's got their own agenda. Everyone. So you may believe that people have the same agenda as you, but in the end, they don't. So it's
Yeah.
the perfect way for CPS to continue doing what they're doing, because you know what? You will never get 1 million votes to vote to change the law, because it just takes too much time, energy, and effort. And people are people. I've been doing this. I've been a lawyer like 38 years. This might be my 39th year. You would think that people would change after you see and hear about all the people that are unfairly treated, that lose their children every day of the week in courts all over the country. You would think people would get together. Have they?
So, Mr. Davis, this week I accepted a position as the United States ambassador for an organization called the Women and Children's Empowerment Network of Africa, or Africa. They're located in Uganda, and it's my goal is to create a network of resources and people sharing information freely to combat human trafficking and raise awareness, and to create curriculum for Wasina about what's going on the cybersecurity level, the CPS level, for here in America, the autism and lack of knowledge surrounding autism and how things happen. And my story is tragic. And I believe that it may be the story that helps change the path of mankind. I've had so many people, when they hear it, just be moved to tears, because what we've had to go through, no family should have to go to. And it's so extreme across so many different levels that even authorities that are now finally able to hear me are blown away at the stuff that happened. I believe that anything is possible. In fact, just yesterday, I shared a meme that said, they said I can't. And I said, watch me. And then I reshared it again this morning in a group. So when you say it's not possible to get 1 million signatures because people won't change, I say, I am living and breathing hope that there can be change, because I have children that are growing up in a world where things like what happened to me are capable. And I'm very passionate about the change. And if I have to stand for something, I mean, Sarah, I'll be honest, I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. But I'm acutely aware of it because of the things that I've had to overcome just to be here today, to have this conversation with you. I have had to fight to exist my entire life. And for the last 2 years, the wars just never stopped. And I landed in a place where I'm as safe as I could be. And I'm in a unique position compared to most, where I'm insulated now from false CPS reports. I'm insulated in so many different ways without giving too much information about where I'm at. I am the safest I could possibly be, and I believe I'm probably safer than anybody else, while realizing that nothing is completely safe. So I want to take this opportunity in my lifetime to do change. And knowing that it's possible with 1 million signatures and people are going to listen to me, forgive me, Mr. Davis, but that sounds like a challenge, and I'm up for it, because I'm already trying to take on, changing the world and educating people and getting them united. Because like you said, everybody has an agenda. And that's why the things happened to me happened, right? Because everybody was competing and there was no help and no way for me to sound the alarm, no way for me to get people to stand together. That's why my motto is together we're stronger. I believe that any issue that needs to be fixed can be done if people who have been affected by it unite together and just start talking about it. And I'm sorry I talked so long. I have to believe that anything is possible, because I want
to tell you a quick story, and this is one of the things you're going to have to watch out for. This happened maybe 10 years ago. I represented a guy. He was a professional family man, upper middle class. He was white, and he caught a CPS case, and he came to me to represent him, and a colleague of mine represented his wife. And one of the things he told me one day was he always thought that people involved in CPS cases were the scum of the earth. That's a direct quote, the scum of the earth, because they were accused of some form of child abuse, and it was probably true. But now, having been involved in the system at that point, he realized that most of the complaints he had been hearing weren't people that were the scum of the earth. They were victims. They were victims of a government agency gone wild.
Raise his hand.
And, we allow this government agency to do things in the interest of protecting children. But in the zest for them to protect children, they violate so many people's rights. It's a very sad situation. So you're gonna have to overcome the stigma of society about being involved in the child abuse system.
I am unafraid of that stigma. If I could drop an F-bomb here, I would. That stigma, okay? I've been a victim of the stigma for a long time. And again, horrible, unspeakable things have happened to me as a result of stigmas surrounding CPS, surrounding drugs that, I couldn't explain how they got in my system, and I was treated like an addict. However, to that, I say, I don't care. I went through something really bad. Other people I know personally, unrelated to me, have started speaking up with me now, and they went through the same thing. And that's scary to think that things like that could happen. However, I say again, unless I end up dead, I am in a place where I am very well insulated. I'm not going to catch another CPS case. It's not going to happen. There's nothing that can happen to me now. I have had the experience of marching into CPS thinking everything was going to be fine and testing positive for drugs that I didn't do. And when I couldn't explain it, it was hell. However, I was responding to a false CPS report when that happened, and that happened multiple times. Again, I know other women that this has happened to, and that's what I want people to know. CPS is out of control, and there does need to be more regulation. Yes, thank you to whoever just said you could get 1 million signatures. I want to change the laws. I want to share my story. Let somebody come at me with a false CPS allegation. Where I live, sir, we have 24/7 security, and when I stand on my front porch, I have 5 cameras pointed at me. And I chose to move here because I was tired of people saying that I was trafficking my kids and strung out on drugs that I don't do for 2 years. It was terrifying. And all I wanted to do was be a present in my daughter's life and be part of my 2 oldest girls' lives. That's all I've ever wanted out of life. And I am a good mom by all accounts. But I had a partner who came in and isolated me. Like it was, and then back-to-back CPS, and nobody to account for me because I couldn't even access my contacts. I couldn't download social media for 5 months while dealing with this. So when they're asking me, do you have anybody you've known for a long time? No, I can't reach any of them, and that just looks bad on you. Like it's ridiculous, you know. So I think this is possible.
Hey, before I end the session of office hours, I want to tell you something that I learned probably within the last 2 years. Okay, and I've been an attorney, 38 years. I learned this from an attorney who he changed his career and became I guess a kind of a pharmacologist, an expert on drugs, alcohol, and drug testing. And he testifies a lot now regarding DUI cases and tests and everything. But anyway, to make a long story short, what he told me, I didn't know. And he told me that if you go into an office or even at the hospital and they give you a drug test, it probably isn't a drug test. It's something called a drug screen. All right? And he told me that in order to have a drug test, you need to have an actual laboratory do this test. Okay? And it's a very involved test, right? But in a lot of these cases, they're making accusations and taking kids based upon drug screens. And the reason why this is important is because in California, drug screens don't meet the scientific level of reliability to be allowed into a court proceeding.
I had no idea, but that explains so much. Wow.
So let me tell you what happened. After that, I happened to be in a county in Northern California, and the social worker was making an allegation that my client was drinking or had drunk over the weekend, and it was like a Monday. And she had heard this from some unknown anonymous source. So the judge tells me, I want your client to go test right now. And I'm thinking, go test right now. There's no drug laboratory around here. And he says, no, right next door, we have a lady that does drug testing. In quotes, drug testing. And I said, basically, that's not a drug test. She doesn't have a laboratory. That's known as a drug screen. And by the way, that's not admissible in court in California. The courtroom went silent. And he said, well, I want her to go drug screen. So she went and drug screen and she tested positive. And then he ordered her to go, which was a couple miles away, to go do a drug test. The actual drug test at the laboratory came back negative. Do you know they still tried to use the drug screen against her? And I kept having to bring it up. It's not admissible. Why are you using it? But it
Wow.
just led me to know that so many people have lost their kids in that county based upon some kind of drug screen done by some administrative person in a little office next door to the courtroom. That is outrageous. Outrageous. Anyway, Kay, I have to go.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on. And if anyone watching, you want to come on during office hours, contact Grace at vincentwdavis.com. She's the producer for these shows, and she'll set you up. All right, everyone, have a good weekend. Bye-bye.